Hi, folks. This is JB Holston, the CEO of NewsGator Technologies. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar for HR professionals. The topic today is giving your onboarding a boost, and we're delighted to have with us Patricia Romeo, who's D-Street leader at Deloitte. Deloitte has done a tremendous amount of interesting work in deploying social computing technologies for the enterprise for lots of benefits. One of the functional categories that I think has benefited the most by the work that they've done is human resources, and we're delighted to have Patricia here to share some of the things that they've learned, particularly around onboarding. Patricia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, JB, and thanks all of you for joining. Hopefully, as a fellow talent professional, you'll get kind of some great ideas off of this seminar about things that you can do and start to think about with regard to the onboarding process of the future. And I say of the future because it's really the direction that we're taking using some of the social technologies that are really being introduced through the NewsGator product. But first, let me start out by telling you just a little bit about kind of our onboarding process, because it's probably pretty similar to a lot of onboarding processes that you've seen across other organizations. So, you know, we do have a day one classroom style delivery. We have a facilitation team that actually has some very senior organizational leaders that are involved in the day-to-day or in the first day kind of delivery of Welcome to Deloitte, as we call it. They're a team of folks, actually. It's a partner or a principal. We have a senior manager, a talent coordinator, and a very senior talent professional that's kind of involved in the full day of activities on both day one and day two. And one of the interesting things that you'll note from our day, kind of our Welcome to Deloitte process, is that we have this kind of dedicated site called the New Hire Center. And this is actually a site that is a subway map that has distinctive lines. So we have the red line and the purple line and the green line that actually takes a new hire kind of through the process of doing things like everything from building networks to learning about the organization to enrolling in benefits. So, you know, nothing too earth-shattering. I mean, we are actually delivering in the first couple of days some very key messages around just the organization as a whole, our culture, and also kind of the do's and don'ts of Deloitte, if you would. But we're doing it, I think, in some pretty unique ways, kind of using different vehicles to deliver the message through everything from employee-generated videos to a couple of interactive games, kind of a spoof on Jeopardy, kind of some fun stuff, and then a lot of general discussions. But the real core of the entire Welcome to Deloitte process, not just the day one, day two, first week experience, is the kind of the core of it is at our social networking system called D-Street. And the way I say that is because D-Street is basically our internal Facebook for Deloitte. And with D-Street, we can actually go and find and explore a lot about our individuals. So let me show you here just a couple of the screenshots that I've captured from our kind of our portal. And you can see the first screenshot is just of kind of the day one activities. And again, everything you see on this, I guess, agenda, if you would, are hyperlinks. And these are hyperlinks that take you to these subway maps that individuals can go through and watch the videos. We watch some videos as a team. We watch some videos kind of as a one-on-one. But you'll see, you'll see that kind of the various stops, and in this example, taking care of business, you know, there is everything from things you need to do to, you know, rent an automobile, to enter expenses, to, you know, obviously launch voicemail within the organization. So very much very core basic things that we're going through day one and day two. It's all great, right? But really, as I said, the injection of social technology and social media and the NewsGator product has really created a whole new experience with our Deloitte New Hire. So what that means for us is that now that we have kind of this Deloitte Facebook for Deloitte, if you would, individuals can actually go into a series of in-depth discovery modes where they can learn so much about the organization with one-on-one experiences. So everything you see kind of in those 16 boxes are really core, we think, to the process of being able to integrate a new person into the organization. And so I'm going to talk about each one of these individually, but the important thing, kind of the important takeaway as a talent professional, is as you kind of hear about these things, you need to ask yourself, you know, what other tools are available to do things like this? Because quite honestly, when we were looking at our organization and trying to understand how we can do things better a couple of years ago, and I'll go back 3, 4, 5 years ago, when we were looking at really not having a lot of what I would call stickiness in our orientation or Welcome to Deloitte process, we found that though people were not getting connected, and that was a core organizational issue that we really needed to address. Deloitte is a large organization. We've gone through a series of changes. We're very matrixed. People work on projects. No one is actually sitting physically shoulder to shoulder in offices on many different projects. So what happens is it's a very diverse and it's a very dispersed population. And so feeling connected to people was really lacking. And this is what kind of the social technology piece has done for us, particularly as it relates to new hires. So the first one, and I'm just going to talk about each one of these individually, exploring and connecting with colleagues. What does this mean? Well, if you think about it, think about Facebook, for those of you that are Facebook users, and really think about kind of how you can learn about your friends, your family members, using the Facebook application and keep up to date about what's going on. Or just if you happen to meet somebody, you just kind of instinctively, particularly if you're under about 25 years old, go to Facebook and look them up. And this is the same concept within the whole D Street application. So this is me. This is my profile. This is a screenshot of my profile, actually. But really quickly, you can see as somebody walks in the room and introduces themselves, there's a way for me to go back as a new hire and actually look up that person and find out more about them. Now, I'll tell you that this information is kind of a combination. We call it kind of a great mashup between our HR systems, which is kind of SAP data sitting behind the scenes, and a SharePoint My Site. And so what we do is we actually blend that information, pre-populate information in the business card section as well as other fields on the profile, and then ask the employees to go out and personalize the profile with information that they want to share across the organization with their colleagues. One really important part you'll see, and you'll see a variety of screenshots kind of around this whole kind of D Street experience, but you see over here on the right-hand side my network. This is kind of the way for you not only to look at who I am and what I do in the organization, but then kind of the other people that are involved with my work and what I do, my friends, my colleagues, all that good stuff, right? So the whole ability to see kind of an individual holistically with this personal and professional landing page or branding page, if you would, really gives a unique experience to every employee to be able to understand not only names and faces as they walk in and out of rooms or are introduced on project sites, but really be able to link and connect with them, add them to their networks, really find out things in common with them. So very important for our new hires. The other part of it is, with this kind of overall branding page, we have the ability to access meaningful information. And what I mean by that is that everything is searchable. So real quickly, I just clicked on, I believe, the word tennis, and you can see kind of the search results that come up of people that have something in common with you. So it may be a particular skill, it may be a particular interest. I may just want to see who else went to the same college I went to, or who else came from the same former employer I went to. And really quickly, I can see that. Some other neat stuff you can see, of course, this presence indicator right over on the left-hand side. This is kind of all integrated with the Microsoft Office suite of tools. So if I were to click on that, I can see, whoops, somebody there. I can see real quickly kind of their availability, as well as some basic information about who they are and what they do within the organization. Certainly they can collaborate, they can ask questions, they can share ideas, and really importantly, they can crowdsource. And what does that mean? Well, we have this part, it's the NewsGator web part, called the activity stream. So as they build their network, as they join communities in this kind of social space, they can actually do some things like ask a question. I didn't understand something during the Welcome to Deloitte orientation. Did anybody hear about X, right? So whether they're sitting in that new hire day one experience and adding the people that are actually sitting in that physical classroom, or whether they're kind of adding people that they know they're going to be working with them, for instance, on their first project. It's the whole ability for them to then be able to share some ideas or ask questions about things perhaps they didn't capture. Now, it's different from email because what happens is this can go out to broader audiences as well. So there's this whole connection point where there can be this kind of engaged dialogue, this threaded dialogue that occurs across the organization. And certainly, myself as a talent leader as well as most people in the organization want to make sure that every other Monday when we're orienting new hires, that we have this ability to kind of answer questions. We are out there kind of looking for people that are out there using the activity stream to kind of crowdsource, ask a question, or share what's on their mind. The other really important thing that we find that's really valuable for the new hire is this whole concept of being able to follow thought leadership and also follow colleagues. So what happens is, as everybody across the kind of entire Deloitte organization uses this virtual tool to be able to add information, share information, suggest reading, whatever it is that they do, I, as a new employee, can actually see that by adding individuals to my colleagues and, as I said, joining communities. So real quickly, this is just a screenshot of my activity stream last week, and you can see kind of all of this really great activity because people are reading articles and they're giving them a rating, or they're taking a course, or they're adding ideas, or they're joining a community. All those different things allow me as a new hire to really quickly get integrated, not just with the people, but with the communities and the concepts that the organization is supporting. Of course, joining the virtual community, you've heard it. Let me show you what it looks like. Here's an example, and we have right now, I think, just under 100 communities. I'm not sure of the actual number, to be honest, and we've not fully launched it across the entire organization quite yet. But I can tell you that it's had just an enormous response organizationally. We have communities that are aligned with our diversity and inclusion efforts, and we have just general interest communities. The neat thing about the communities at Deloitte that we've started is that some of them are what we would call sponsored communities, that the organization is really keen on getting kind of membership and getting activities and doing things around events. And there are other ones where they're completely employee-driven. So we have things like health and fitness communities. We had a great 20-ton challenge community where, organizationally we were trying to lose a bunch of weight. So everyone who was trying to lose weight could actually join this community called the 20-ton challenge. The reason this is important is that, again, it creates stickiness in your day one experience. So in this example, whether you'd be a gay, lesbian, or bisexual professional, you could actually go in and find others like you. The same thing with our Black Employee Network, the same thing with our Hispanic Network, and the same thing with a group of people who are trying to lose weight if that's something you're trying to do. Of course, we have business-generated communities as well, things that just are really intended to get people smart, quick about a particular topic. So the example I often use in that one is a health reform community. So when the Obama administration passed the Health Reform Act a couple of months ago, we could stand up a community and really quickly build upon that community the resources and the expertise that we have across our very large organization, so we could share ideas, pull in feeds from the whitehouse.org, and be able to get a large group of people really smart about something. Of course, a new hire can kind of browse these communities and really quickly, by clicking on this link called Join This Community, they instantly become a member. And membership gets them two things. Number one, it gives them the ability to contribute. So these communities are about 98% what we call user-generated content. So it's basically the content is built by the actual members of the community. So it's not one person that's actually in there editing a page. It's everyone being able to add articles, to be able to add comments, to ask a question, to add a calendar event. All of those things as a member you can do. The other thing it does is it gets you a subscription to the activity stream. So as things happen across your community that you've joined, you are also alerted on that activity stream that I showed you. You can receive relevant information via a very centralized, what we call a me-centric portal. So, hopefully this is not too technology deep for you, but if there are any iGoogle or My Yahoo users out there, I'm a big fan of iGoogle. Here's the kind of customized Deloitte portal where you can actually start to build what you want to see based on what's important to you. So the same thing that iGoogle does, right? I can go out and I can do my news subscriptions. I can add my Facebook feed. I can add my LinkedIn feed, my Twitter feed, maybe a couple, cooking applications. This is the same concept, but these are all applications that are built within the Deloitte structure. So as a client services practitioner, I can see my outstanding invoices. I can see my weeks unbilled. I can see my client service hours, opportunities that I'm actually being proposed on. I can see my time off, my learning. All these really great things, including web parts that are geared for new hires, so new hire learning recommendations. You see over here in the right-hand corner a new hire checklist where you actually have to go in and be able to see things from a red, yellow, green indicator about things you need to be addressing as new hire in your first 7 days, first 14 days, first 60 days. So again, this whole concept is it's not just, people shooting lots of emails to you and saying, hey, did you fill out that, time and expense report? It's really this whole concept of having this customized dashboard, and you're not going to get that email because you already did that and your indicator is green. So much more of a user-centric kind of me view of all the stuff that you think you need to see. So the concept is what you need is what you get versus, I guess the old way was what you see is what you get. Build a personal and professional landing page. So, this whole concept is, you saw my landing page, as a new employee, you can go out and actually build this page and share information about you to help you get better integrated, to help you become kind of more connected with individuals across the organization. So the neat thing is, of course we're sharing business information, and it is, of course, at the end of the day about the business. But we also try to share some personal information. And the reason we do that is because, again, at the end of the day, the millennial, the kind of the younger generation, is looking to kind of blend that personal and professional work experience. And so on our profile, although I didn't scroll down on mine, you can see we have things and ways that we can share everything from our favorite music to TV shows to books. And just kind of a fun success story, but I know this summer when James Blunt was in town here in Cincinnati, I got an invitation from a group of folks who were just James Blunt fans, and they found me because of D Street. And again, if I were a new hire, of course I've been here for years, and that didn't really make a huge impact on me. But if I'm trying to build connections and feel a part of something within the Deloitte organizational structure, it would be a pretty powerful invitation for me. And that's the way that I could be found both personally and professionally. Exploring others, of course, I've talked about it. And of course, we have a whole kind of powerful search that is actually producing results across the entire profiling system. So, whether I type in my personal hobby of tennis, I can see about 3,000 people that come back with tennis. Or, in my former employer, Computer Sciences Corporation, so I can find out folks that also worked at CSC. Kind of a fun little exercise as I was going through and building this presentation and grabbing screenshots, I realized that this person here in Cleveland had joined the organization, and I did not even know that. It just happened to be from there, so I reached out and connected to her, and now she's a part of my network. So kind of a fun success story. Neat stuff, too, that we do is we have local office communities, and these are kind of based on our geographies where we have offices kind of located throughout the United States. And what happens is these local offices are really intended to do a lot of things around building connectivity across our functions. Deloitte, like many other organizations, we're very stovepiped in a lot of senses, and what we offer, kind of 4 distinct business lines. We have our tax services, consulting services, audit services, and oftentimes we don't have a lot of kind of cross-collaboration that occurs across those business lines. We actually physically sit on different floors, so there's not a lot of opportunity for audit people to talk to consulting folks and vice versa. This is kind of the common platform where you don't have to be sitting in the office. You don't happen upon somebody in a coffee room to actually be able to engage in a conversation. So we have this community. It's built around the geography itself. It's cross-functional, and it's a great way for new hires to actually go in and introduce themselves organizationally. Here's a great example of just my introduction and how I may introduce myself, and this is actually part of the exercise that we do during the Welcome to Deloitte orientation. And what happens is you can see this is a screenshot of the Cincinnati office and kind of some really nice welcoming messages back as the result of somebody going out and kind of introducing themselves. So you get all kind of, we do run, I probably should have said this earlier, we do run Welcome to Deloitte every other Monday. So it's kind of neat to see some of the activity across these local office communities when you see kind of folks saying, hi, today's my first day at Deloitte, and a bunch of people either like it or comment it or say, hey, so glad you're here, stop in, I'm on the 17th floor. So it's just a whole new level of bringing kind of names to faces and faces to names. Explore people networks. So this is one of the NewsGator web parts that we find to be very valuable for the new hire. So the concept is as you're looking at various profiles, we have a social networking graph. You can click on it and you can see kind of by proximity individuals who are working with certain sets of people. So if you're looking at my profile and you clicked on my social network, you would see that this is a team of folks that I'm working closely with. And of course, the individuals whose pins are closer to my name are those individuals with whom I'm having more regular interactions, whether we're sharing more common communities, we are subscribing to the same types of information. You can also have colleagues recommended based on certain attributes and interests. This is kind of a really neat thing for new hires, particularly what we call recent college grads. So the concept is, as you are exploring the whole DeloitteNet kind of portal, if you would, we have certain web parts that are kind of placed throughout the portal. And the recommended colleagues is one of those. So every time you go on to a certain page, you're going to get a new set of recommended colleagues that perhaps have something in common with you. In general, these are people who maybe belong to a community that you belong to. It could be, the Notre Dame alumni community if you're a recent college grad. So, you know, again, it's just introducing people who also went to Notre Dame, creating that level of connection. By hitting the ignore, you'll never see that person recommended again. By hitting add, of course, you can add them to your network and then start to see some of the activity that they're associated with. If you have no idea who they are, you can actually hover over and see kind of a mini profile with some of basic information as well as a link to their D Street profile. Browsing virtual communities to join. So as I said, we have almost 100 communities. There's a page on our DeloitteNet portal called People in Communities. This little cover flow is intended to give you kind of an overall experience as to how you can actually see those communities, scroll through them like you would on your iPod, and click on a community and actually take you there. And actually, if you're interested in it, you can join it. So pretty easy way to actually get integrated with either personal or business-related communities across the entire Deloitte organization. And then, of course, in any community, you know, once you join one, you can participate on discussion boards. You can share with blogs, share ideas. A couple of examples, again, our 20-ton challenge. You can see a discussion board just talking about dieting tips. On our Deloitte Harley-Davidson Owners Group, you can see a blog about somebody's recent Harley ride. So again, there's something for everybody out there in terms of ways to connect. And of course, I'm showing you the personal side of things, but can only suggest that there are as many professional and business-related communities as well. The bottom line is that all of this really has made a very large organization like Deloitte feel quite a bit smaller. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about for a new hire. We don't want to overwhelm them. We want to give them good information, but we want them to get connected. And that's what we think we've done a good job in doing. So let me talk a minute about our journey, and then I'm going to turn it over to JB just to talk a little bit about the technology. So, of course, we didn't build this all in one day. We actually started with D Street, which is kind of the Facebook application, in about January of 2008. From there, we converged it with our internal portal, and that's where we are today. Now, one of my challenges is trying to actually build this into a whole nother layer. So we talked about the new hire experience. What I'm trying to do organizationally is actually build it into every aspect of the employee life cycle. And you see just a little kind of snippet of examples there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to JB, and he can talk about kind of onboarding with social sites.
That was a great rundown, Patricia. Thanks very much. We appreciate that, and there have been a number of questions that have been generated. Talk a little bit about an example of a new employee and talk a little bit about some of the ways that some of the newer things that we're working on are particularly used in an onboarding scenario. Patricia talked about some great examples in the Deloitte case. I think what we're finding is that as work becomes more virtual over time, as people start to interact with one another and with their communities of interest and communities of practice, increasingly from the edge, meaning some potentially remote location, oftentimes not within an office, and more frequently from mobile devices or something other than just what's considered a traditional computer. The need to create close social connections has gone up dramatically. And the good news is that everyone's experiencing consumer social network kinds of applications, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, means that we've got employees, we've got talent who are very familiar with the means to become social online. In terms of onboarding in particular, social computing tools are useful for lots of things that traditionally you needed to do in person to get any value. Things like introducing employees to policies. Interestingly, introducing employees to the company culture, which sounds like a very soft skill and is, and yet can be done through automated means now, which is surprising. Easing folks into the use of these kinds of tools themselves can be important, depending in particular on what kinds of employees you've got. Fundamentally, it's all about trying to create a much more boundaryless kind of organization. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is that folks are driving these kinds of applications to bring down barriers not just within organizations, but externally as well, so that folks can collaborate in ways similar to the ways that you saw Patricia's application with external constituents as well. And in addition, you still want to be able to enforce policies. Governance is a big topic. We've got some questions for Patricia on that, but governance is a big topic as these kinds of applications get deployed as well. Let me give you an example of a process that we use to try to automate onboarding as much as possible. So in this context, imagine that you've got a brand new employee and he's going to hit the system for the first time. So he's going to, we actually call our home system HAL, for those of you who are of my age and remember that analogy. When an employee starts with our organization, they're going to go to that destination on the intranet. And again, they may be doing it through a mobile device, or they may be doing it directly to a URL. And they're going to go through essentially a three-step process to start to become a member of the broader community, all on an automated basis. The first step, and what you're looking at in the upper left of the screen here, is an introduction to terms and conditions. And as it turns out, this sort of thing is a really important step we found to put into the onboarding process. And there are a couple of pieces in particular that are important. One is policies around the use of the system itself. We'll talk with Patricia a little bit about globalization, but privacy issues, for example, can differ dramatically depending on your jurisdiction. If you're in the EU, privacy policies and laws are very different than if you're in the United States. If you're in Germany within the EU, the European Union, they differ dramatically from other countries within the EU. So an ability to have a process which tells folks exactly what the system is going to keep by way of information about that individual and how it's going to use that information is not just useful in terms of getting folks comfortable with the system and with the company's policies generally, but in some cases legally required to allow these things to be deployed at all. The second screen you see here is the first step in what we've called the Welcome Wizard. And the Welcome Wizard, the idea of the Welcome Wizard is essentially to step the individual through a process that's going to fill in their profile. What we try to do is make it as easy and user-friendly as possible. So breaking it down into steps versus simply giving someone, for example, a flat form that they need to take a great deal of time to fill out. Providing help along the way. You see a little question mark up in the upper right, which if the individual has any concerns or questions about what they're actually doing here, they can click on and have answers to. And then using language that is very familiar for the individual when asking them to fill in the profile. These are sort of UI, UX related changes to the out-of-box ways that these systems typically interact, which go which help tremendously to essentially make the system socially intelligent sufficiently that folks are going to want to engage. So if you're going to ask someone to fill in attributes about themselves that the HR system can use to identify them as an expert, you want to ask them to tell you about themselves. So fill in about me. Talk about the kind of responsibilities that you've got currently. Talk about your past projects, your skills, your school, your picture. And try to make that whole process so easy and so natural language-like that anyone coming into the system would naturally know what to do. The third step you're seeing here then is taking some of the information from the first step of the profile and starting to drill down to give the system a little bit more information about the individual so that it can make things like expertise location and recommending colleagues and recommending communities to join, can make that much more accurate, because rapidly the issue for folks is becoming an overload rather than information opportunity. There are so many folks, content, and communities to have relationships with that you really want the system to narrow down your choices somewhat so that you don't feel like there's just too much all the time. So in this case, what's happened is that by virtue of the interests, responsibilities, et cetera, that were filled in earlier, the system now can suggest some keywords at the top of this picture, for example, that may help describe you in ways that are going to help the system find other experts or recommend other colleagues and communities for you. So it suggested a variety of terms that may describe you that you hadn't already filled out, and you can check off those that you think might be useful to add to your profile as well. Similarly, you can create keywords to describe yourself in addition to what you will have filled in the profile. If you want folks to know that you're that you describe yourself around specific kinds of expertise. In this example, social computing and social computing adoption, you can fill that in, and interests as well. Expand on the kind of interests that you've got. Patricia talked about this, but we've certainly found that in deployments of these sorts of technologies, allowing folks to express their personal interests, their personal predilections, what they care about in their spare time, can be as much a factor in driving adoption and in successful use of these systems as the more business kinds of content that you'd expect. And then specifically give folks the ability to share or not share. How all this gets implemented depends very much on our customers, depends on the geography, et cetera. But a stepwise process to take that individual employee into the community virtually is something that we found is really useful in getting engagement from the outset. Patricia talked about a number of these attributes as well, so I'm going to touch on a couple of other examples here too. Let me just jump out of this for a second. If you've got any questions, I should have said this at the start, please do use the question and answer function on the interface for the webinar to send those along to us. We've received a number already, but if you've got any others that you'd like us to address, please use the Q&A feature to send those questions to us, and we'll address them here at the end of the conversation. In this example, Brandon, who's a new employee, is using the activity stream. Patricia showed you that implemented up at Deloitte, and is starting out by asking a question. In the way our systems work now, you can actually specify a question as something different from a general update to an activity. You'll be able to specify an idea as something different from a question and something different from a general activity update. Over time, you're going to be able to specify what it is that you're trying to do very easily whenever you update your activity. And the benefit of that is, in this instance, for example, since Brandon's asking a question, he can direct that question to folks who may be able to answer the question. In this case, Brandon has used what's called a hashtag. For any of you who use Twitter, you may be familiar with a hashtag, but a hashtag is a tag that essentially it's meta content that specifies, in this case, the nature of the question or some aspect or attribute of the question. And when Brandon has used the hashtag social sites, which is the product name in his question, what happens, and you're seeing this on the lower right-hand side of your screen, since Matt Banks, who's someone that Brandon doesn't know, Brandon's not necessarily connected with, and again, Matt doesn't know Brandon either because Brandon's entirely new to the company, because Brandon embedded that link, that hashtag social sites, and because Matt in his profile had said, you can ask me about social sites, Matt now is going to have that question directed directly to him. So Brandon's question about I'm partaking in next week's board meeting and I need documentation, etc. Matt now has an alert, which actually is going to be received via email in addition to existing in his activity stream in the system, and can come to him on his iPhone or his iPad or whatever the particular device may be that he's using. Matt now is alerted that there's this fellow named Brandon who has a specific question around social sites that Matt may be able to address. You see here what it looks like in email. So Matt actually received that email. Matt can respond directly via email in the upper left if Matt hit reply in email. That reply would go back directly to Brandon as an answer, as an embedded answer to that part of the activity stream for Brandon. And again, Matt may have done this in his email client on his desktop. He may have done it on his mobile device, wherever. It doesn't matter, and that's an important part of all this from our perspective. And then Matt can respond. And in responding, Matt can embed a link to a particular resource. He can do essentially whatever is useful to do in that particular response. So now you've got Brandon who, on day one is now jumping in and asking a generic question, having a new connection with somebody who's an expert in the category, and having been pointed potentially to resources that are useful for Brandon as well. In fact, in this case, what you see is that someone else has jumped in with, someone from marketing has jumped in with a response to Brandon's question that has to do with marketing, and is pointing Brandon to a particular community which has been set up specifically for a particular purpose. So in this case, it's a work-related purpose community called Selling Tools. Janae has actually linked directly to that community in her response to Brandon. Brandon actually has the ability to specify that as the specific, concrete, actual, correct answer to his question, so that as we collect answers to questions in the knowledge base going forward, we now know which ones are the ones that the community, the crowd, is determined to be the most accurate answers. And he's got a link directly to another resource, in this case, this community that's all about selling tools, that he can click on to go to see a whole panoply of tools that are available. You'll notice that while email has been used here, it hasn't been a primary mechanism for all of this. If you think about how this would have happened historically, it may have been Brandon walking down the hall to ask his new boss who he might ask about X, Y, or Z, that boss saying send an email to so-and-so, Brandon sending an email to so-and-so who responds by email with an attachment, et cetera, et cetera. Virtually all of this interaction instead is happening in the community, in the activity stream, virtually, with email really used more for alerting folks to update such that they have an easy way to respond back. Patricia covered this pretty well, so I'm not going to go into it in a ton of detail, excuse me. One of the things that are really helpful, and if you think about this from a new employee context in particular, is the ability to rapidly find other folks who have some expertise around whatever it is that you're trying to do. And particularly in a large distributed organization, when you're new, this can be a really hairy problem. Trying to find the right person with the right answer, typically the siloed structure of organizations has been such that the barriers to, the disincentives to even try are so great that it usually takes folks a long time to get comfortable to use the network systems appropriately to really find experts. And we're trying to make all of that much more seamless, much easier, and much less emotional, if you will. What you're seeing here on the upper left is what's called the tag cloud. So in this context, if excuse me, if our new employee goes into what's called the Knowledge Explorer part of the site, he gets this huge tag cloud, which are basically terms that describe content in the system. And in this case, he hit the term competition because he wants to understand more about who knows what about competition for his new company. And he gets this little picture in the middle of the screen here, which shows him which folks in the organization are most closely affiliated with that topic. And as for the example that Patricia showed you in the Deloitte context, proximity, as measured by the distance from the topic, determines who has the most expertise. And what you're seeing on the right is all the artifacts, all the activities that the person's been associated with that determine that they have expertise around that particular topic. Those kind of activities could be anything from having uploaded a document, potentially having edited a blog post, having edited a wiki, having updated an activity event, sort of anything that the individual may have done that resonates relative to this topic of competition is something that gets wrapped into a score that associates that individual with that particular term. So Brandon can do lots of things from here. He can find out about that individual. He can now add them as a colleague if he wasn't involved. Or he can go to the underlying artifacts, the underlying actual elements that determine that this person is an expert in that particular content. And what you see in the lower right is that that's exactly what Brandon's doing here. He's clicked on these artifacts. He's now got a list of particular documents that pertain to competition, and they may be exactly what he's looking for. So rather than the sort of normal, strive, difficult process that's involved in trying to find not just an expert, but also the artifact that is in fact what you really want when you're looking for a particular term, there's now been a virtual easy path for Brandon to use to get a piece of documentation, an artifact that has high value, high work value for him without having had to pick up the phone, without having to go into the Active Directory or other kind of structure, and without having to just hope. So again, to summarize, lots of fun things happening for our notional new employee, Brandon here. Brandon can find an easier, very socially intelligent way to get involved with the system from an onboarding point of view. By virtue of things like activity streams, Brandon can be involved in the flow, the knowledge flow, the community flow, the social flow from the outset, and in ways that are very similar to the ways that Brandon's probably interacting with systems like these in his life as a consumer. So very Facebook-like, very LinkedIn-like, very Twitter-like in terms of the ways that Brandon can interact. And the virtue of all of that is that Brandon can do things that have direct work value and things that have indirect work value. In this particular instance, for example, Brandon can go all the way down to vote on the kinds of furniture that the office is going to go buy as a way to be a participant in, again, a softer kind of decision that affects his life in the organization as well. So hopefully all those examples gave you a sense of the value of enterprise social computing solutions relative to onboarding in particular around talent management, and a good picture of why social is such a critical theme to not just onboarding, but taking your talent all the way from the inception of the career through their time with you and even beyond. With that, let me turn back to Patricia. We've had a number of questions that have come in. So let me address some of those questions to Patricia. Patricia, do we have you on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. I'm going to keep this screen up for now, so rather than jump back and forth between the presentation, but there were some questions that had come up in particular. Patricia, you talked about some of the systems with which you're integrating. You mentioned the SAP system with respect to data. One question was, what other technologies or what other systems are you integrating with? And folks were specifically asking if SharePoint is part of the solution that you were showing, in addition to the question of whether there are other systems that you're integrating with in addition to SAP.
Yeah, so it's I don't know, JB, if you can scroll back to that Talent 2.0 lifecycle. You'll see
Sure.
that SAP is just one part of it. And you know, the more we do with trying to integrate kind of this customized employee lifecycle experience into the Deloitte everyday employee experience, you'll see that there is a lot more integration with other systems. For example, our learning. So our ability to not only go and browse learning courses using Saba, our ability to actually recommend learning based on skills, attributes, tags, expertise, using the expertise locator that JB was talking about, will be critical, right? So I go and I tag myself as being interested in Web 2.0, which would mean all kinds of things related to SharePoint, right? Related to maybe a lot of other systems that are out there that we may have relating learning-related materials. And so Saba would be another one of them. Looking at kind of the recruitment process, we use Taleo. How are we going to start to build customized web parts, for example, for our recruiters to have kind of an integrated map to show and hover over kind of a mashup between Google Maps and Taleo, so you can see all the openings, so our employees can hover over and see those openings around specific geographic areas to actually encourage things like employee referrals. So quite honestly, you know, we're doing it currently with SAP, but our goal is to reach into all of our kind of HR-related systems and really tap all of those as potential web parts to start to display either in data form or in mashup form some information that will appear on the My Deloitte page, which is that iGoogle page that we showed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrific. A related question, in terms of the default homepage for Deloitte employees, there are a lot of different things that have been shown. Could you talk a little bit about how you folks think about the homepage for the employee and where you see that, what you see that being going forward? And you may have just answered that with respect to My Deloitte.
Well, you know, it's interesting. We've been there are two different I think schools of thought around the homepage and the purpose of the internal corporate homepage. If I were to kind of express my thought, I think the millennial, kind of the 20-something employee and kind of our future employee would want a more of a My Deloitte experience. So they want to see what they want to be able to customize their homepage to be able to see what they think they need. And that's all. They don't want to be forced information. Now, that's not necessarily the corporate model, and particularly as it relates to corporate communications. At the end of the day, we still have to convey pertinent information to core sets of employees. So instead of the way we used to envision the homepage in the past was just, you know, blast out all these really interesting news stories, interesting to me maybe, interesting to somebody else maybe not so much, right? So the concept is now that we've really focused on customization and relevancy for our homepage. So when I log on to DeloitteNet, it's not the My DeloitteNet page that a person is going to. It's the homepage of DeloitteNet, which really has streamed news feeds based on attributes associated with me in the SAP system. So it knows right away that I'm logging in. It knows that I'm a talent professional. It knows that I reside in the Cincinnati office. It knows things about me, and therefore it's selecting news stories based on what I need to see or what might be more relevant to me. So the kind of classic homepage launch is never going to go away, particularly within Deloitte, because quite honestly, we're a highly regulated organization, right? We do audits. We have independence alerts. We have things that our employees just have to know. And, you know, because it's kind of inconvenient to have to see something that maybe they don't want to see, the reality is, we are organizationally responsible for informing employees about certain information. So the homepage is still going to remain the homepage, but relevancy is going to be much more of a factor going forward.
Thanks. That's great. I think one of the things that all of us are thinking through is the question of the homepage and a URL of any sort in a world of mobile devices. Sort of the iconic, someone gets off a plane and whips out their mobile device, and that for the next 25% of their workday may be the only interface they've got to systems like this. And how you deal with the notion of a homepage in a context like that is one of the things I think we're all thinking through. And that's a segue to the question about mobile. The folks were wondering how you folks are thinking about mobile as part of all of this.
Yeah. Mobile is a big part of our anywhere, anytime strategy. So what we know is that a lot of our practitioners don't often have access to high-speed internet, and we've actually had some challenges with people using air cards to try to get the experience, to get the kind of the really integrated feel that you can from the office. You just can't get it from an air card sometimes using the DeloitteNet portal. We know mobile is the answer. We know that tablets is going to be a big part of our future strategy. So everything, our goal by the end of this year is everything you can see on the DeloitteNet portal, you can see on a core supported set of mobile apps or mobile phones. And that we actually are in the testing mode of that already. We can do things like view profiles, comment on status. There are some news stories you can read. It's a pretty rich experience already, but it's something that we are building in as a core, goal for us organizationally to really ramp up our mobile apps and mobile experience.
That's great. Thank you. Lots of questions about governance and privacy. One came up when you were talking about the Globe and Allies community in particular. How do you deal with privacy with respect to folks, in particular with respect to folks joining communities and conversations in communities, et cetera?
Well, I mean, it's user-generated content. We basically, for something like Globe, we do alert individuals. If you're joining Globe, that is going to be kind of people in your network, people in other communities are going to be aware of the fact that you've joined that community. So if you're concerned about that, don't join. And that's an alert that sits on Globe just because of the nature of the Globe community. You look at another one like the Hispanic or the Black Employee Network, really not so much of a privacy concern. But anything, the privacy rules basically state that you can't take somebody's image, for example, and put it out there. But if they put it out there, then basically they're consenting for it to be used and viewed by other professionals within Deloitte using the guidelines that we've given them. And so it's not really a privacy issue per se as much of as it's a learning issue for individuals to understand just what join means in certain communities.
That's great. Bit of a segue here. You'd mentioned experts, identifying experts, and the question had come up, do you have any process or program to reward experts or folks who become big contributors or community managers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there are several schools of thought around that. Do you reward people for contributing? And for every article I've read that says yes, there's one that says no. Deloitte as an organization doesn't. It's actually one of those core, attributes that we look for in our employees are people that are generally willing to share. We do have a knowledge sharing and knowledge asset management system that we use and reuse several different work products and client deliverables. And that is a big part of the overall kind of thought process that Deloitte, as a foundational organization, has based upon, is that everything that you learn, you have to be willing to impart that wisdom on to 10 other people. So it's one of those core values that, as an organization, we've always kind of instilled into our employees, and really this is just an enabler of that. So we've not felt as though we have to incent people to do it. People genuinely know kind of that's the right thing to do, and that's kind of the organization that we are. And the more you share, the better off a lot of people will be, and the organization as a whole will be better off. So we've not needed to go there yet. Community managers is another thing. And the reason I say that is because right now we don't incent community managers to do it, to actually manage a community. There is a commitment on behalf of the community manager. They have to go through a 2-hour training course. They actually have to do kind of some initial work up front around getting leader buy-in and trying to get the approval and all that thing, because there's an approval process just to get a community provisioned. And so they do that kind of because they have a desire to enable a community virtually, right? I mean, so generally what we're seeing is most community managers already had a pretty vibrant community, and we're doing a lot of things maybe using email or maybe even some publishing sites for a more sophisticated community. Now this has really just pushed them to the whole new level of being able to do more with their community. So we've not incented them, but this question kind of came up in a discussion that we've had over the past couple of weeks, and that is, how much is community management a part of our performance management? So in other words, if I, at the end of the day, am responsible for developing a core group of people with experience around a particular skill or industry, then isn't my ability to, kind of visually display and share information an important part of that? And, we might go there, or we might build the community management program into some core performance, but not incent them.
Great. That's very helpful. Thank you. This is a big question. Maybe you could take a couple of minutes. So people were asking, as you went through the process of creating and then deploying all of this, what was the role of your group? If you could talk a little bit about the various kind of internal or constituents for the effort and how they work together to get this done. So obviously you've got IT, you've got talent management, you mentioned corporate communications. Folks are kind of wondering if you had lessons learned from that process in terms of which groups need to be included, how you can set up a process that's functional across those groups to get this sort of thing in place.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that. Obviously what I showed you today, I mean, that didn't just happen overnight. It's one of those things that it was really several years in the works. And one of the things I would suggest is to any person, I think I benefited from the fact that I came from the talent or HR side of the house. And that for, I think, Deloitte in being able to get up an application like this was, it actually was helpful because we had core business reasons as to why we needed to make this successful. When we started to look at not only our workplace in the future and how we wanted to be a more attractive place for the millennial in being able to be more obviously successful in recruitment and retention, we also wanted to do things like enable collaboration and idea sharing and be able to really enhance the employee experience. So there were some core kind of talent underlying objectives when we kind of put together our business valuation plan or business value plan. When we actually started to formulate that, I can tell you that our risk and legal departments probably thought we were crazy. And the reason I say that is because, obviously you start saying, oh, we want to be able to share information, or anybody can put anything they want out there. And of course, from an employee relations perspective, you think of things like employee defamation, right? So I can write on a, discussion board about, how terrible my boss is. Oh my gosh, that's just going to be horrible. And what if, and what if, and what if? And so we did have to put a certain amount of kind of protection in place for the organization. And I will tell you, because we were one of the early organizations kind of into this space, and there wasn't a lot of precedent out there about what we might expect, we probably went to the extreme side of things and have a pretty rigorous moderation process where, initially, we had to make promises around actually looking at content, looking at every photo that gets uploaded, looking at every blog that gets written in order to make sure from a legal and risk perspective that we're not exposing the organization to any undue risk. Now, fast forward 3 years and kind of, 3 years of use under our belt, and I would say pretty heavy use because, we have a lot of employees that are out there just doing things across this entire space. I will tell you that less than 1% of anything that's ever been done has imposed any sort of risk whatsoever. And kind of the rules, the terms by which we've outlined initially are very much embraced. And what that means is people generally get it. They're not gonna. They know that there's no anonymous posting. They're not going to lose their job, but they don't want to lose their job over some stupid posting that they may have put out there, or maybe an inappropriate photo that they wanted to share. It just people are generally pretty smart about that. So if I were, I guess my lesson learned, and again, hindsight is always 20/20. We probably went to more extreme. If you're starting out today, I think people there's a lot of precedent in place to suggest that maybe you don't need the rigor for moderation that we put in place.
Well, that's great. All very helpful. We're coming up to the top of the hour, so I've put up here some contact information for folks who have follow-up questions. We will be distributing to everyone who is a participant, everyone who dialed in, a link to a copy of the presentation, so look for that from us. Please do reach out if you've got any questions. On behalf of my colleagues here at NewsGator and the folks at HR.com, I wanted to thank Patricia Romeo for a very informative tour and encourage folks to both look at the PowerPoint and the webcast and pass those on to others if you've got further questions. Patricia, thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye-bye. Everyone have a good day. Bye-bye.